What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we joined by John Karalis from the Locked On Celtics podcast as the Celtics finished with the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference and have been the most dominant team in the NBA post All-Star break. How they've had so much success, and can the Celtics carry their recent success into the first round of the NBA playoffs? But first, quick message from our friends over at BetOnline, because betonline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season. And hey, you've still got time to get in on some of these championship odds over at BetOnline. Right now, the Phoenix Suns plus 275 to win it all this season. After the Suns, you got the Milwaukee Bucks coming in second at plus 550. The Brooklyn Nets at plus 700. The Boston Celtics, hey, plus 750. Should they be higher or lower on this list? Golden State Warriors rounding out the top five at plus 850. And again, BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Joining us now is John Karalis from Locked On Celtics, also Locked On NBA Wednesdays. You can follow him on Twitter at John_Karalis. John, looking at the Celtics finishing it, well, in a three-way tie, technically, but they're at the top of the Eastern Conference, the number 2 overall seed in the Eastern Conference. Did you even remotely imagine thinking about where this team could get to, and seeing them at this point, given the way that the season started for the Celtics and the struggles that they faced early on?
I was always confident in a turnaround because I always thought that they were better than they were showing. They were obviously very frustrating. I don't think anybody could have predicted a team that briefly got that top seed for at least a couple of days. There was a stretch there when they were starting to win a few. I thought back in January, because they had just come off a horrible December. December was when we saw the schedule. I knew December was going to be a bear. I thought January might be an opportunity to a little bit easier competition. They started to get healthy. I thought maybe they could get a 4 or 5 game win streak together. They got better than that. And then you start to look down and say, hey, 50 wins is not out of the question, but that's such a long shot with this team. And they just kept on going, kept on going, kept on going. And next thing you know, man, like, you start to see, okay, some continuity with these guys. They got healthy. Everybody's in their normal spots. Marcus Smart's the point guard. Dennis Schroeder's kind of like was minimized and then traded. And you start to see how everything started to pick up. You started to see how Jayson Tatum was buying into what Ime Udoka was trying to get him to do, and Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams. All of these guys just started to play great. And Brad Stevens recently said this, and it's a perfect summation. Their best players reached unbelievable levels, and their role players raised their games as well. And that, when that all happens, you've got yourself a really, really good team.
Yeah, you look at this team, you make the pretty firm argument. I feel like the Celtics have been the best team in the NBA since the All-Star break. And the numbers
Yeah.
kind of support that. They're 17-5 post All-Star break, and they've got an insane number 1 in offense, number 4 in defense, and they have a whopping 12.7 net rating. That's 5 points higher than the next person on the
Yeah.
list, next team on the list. They've been
It's wild,
playing
right?
some really dominant basketball. Is there, I know you mentioned, the buy-in from Jayson Tatum, from Jaylen Brown, the guys at the top, right? The role players kind of like hitting their ceilings, really fulfilling each of their, specific niche roles, all of that. But is there a singular thing you can point to? Is it just Ime Udoka at the helm that they've just bought into what he's trying to do, and that's where this turnaround kind of came from?
Yeah. I think it starts with him. Like, he is the epicenter of this. He's the sun, and the rest of these guys are the planets revolving around him. You still need that full solar system, but that, I think, is where we're at. Let's the breakdown for me is this. The Celtics were 18-21. So that's their lowest point. They were 11th. They're 33-10 since then. Ime Udoka has been consistent throughout this whole thing. he said from the beginning, we're trying to break some bad habits, and that doesn't happen overnight. And he compared it to raising children, where you can tell some kids no, and they're still going to do things until you keep saying no, and then they finally come around and they realize, okay, I actually do have to listen. And I don't want to turn it into something that I don't want to marginalize the players, because it's at this level, it's a very collaborative effort. But Ime was stern and very direct. And this is if you're going to be Jayson Tatum MVP candidate, you can't keep doing it the way you're doing it. You got to grow. The best players out there, the MVP candidates, make their other teammates better. And Tatum wasn't making his teammates better necessarily. He was out there just winning games on his own by getting hot and scoring 50, in prior seasons. This year, when he was scoring 50, he was doing it with some assists. He was doing it uh, organically. It's a very different Jayson Tatum. So it starts with Ime saying, this is how we're going to do things. And if you're not going to do things, then we're gonna pull you into a film session. We're gonna call timeouts. I'm gonna get on your ass, and we're going to try to do things this way. The guys all bought in. They all fell in line, and you just go one after another after another. Once everybody buys in and it's all the same page, you're all on the same page. Then that's when special things happen, and especially defensively. That's the whole thing. You had capable players defensively, but the scheme works and they're bought into the scheme. When you got talent, scheme, and effort, those are the three elements to an elite defense.
This Celtics team, I know you mentioned the health aspect a little bit earlier there. Unfortunately, right, a huge blow to this Celtics team was losing Robert Williams. Just who has stepped up kind of in his absence? Has it been one guy in particular? Has it been more of a collective effort to replace his production for this team?
Well, I think so. Daniel Tice has actually been pretty good. I compare him to a spare tire, where you put that little donut on your car and you can still get to where you need to go. You just can't do all the stuff that you used to be able to do. And you can't drive over 55. You can't take a hard turn, but you can still get to where you're going. And Tice, the thing about Tice is he can still roll and catch lobs. You just got to throw the lobs a little lower for him, and he might catch them and lay them up, or he might catch it, come down, and go up on the other side. So he can still do a lot of the things that Robert Williams does fundamentally. He just can't do them spectacularly. And so you still see some guys on the other team, like there's no fear there with Tice lurking around. The attacking the basket is a little more brazen. And some guys defensively on the perimeter for the Celtics had gotten pretty used to having Rob back there. So you can kind of let guys go by. You can kind of gear them, steer them into a certain thing. And, Tice is there, but, he's fouling them instead of blocking their shots. So, but for now, he's been fine. And, you get Al Horford and you get a little bit of Grant Williams and all of that. But the Celtics have gotten by. Can they get through a first round series like this? The hope is that the rest of the guys can kind of do enough where, yeah, you can get through a first round series. And the good news with Robert Williams is everybody keeps talking about him coming back sooner rather than later. I think the 4 to 6 weeks, Ime Udoka wants to stick to that 4 to 6 weeks, but you can tell when he's talking, he's like, he wants to say it won't be 4 to 6, but he's just saying we're not expecting him back. We can't rule it out because you never know. But I think the Celtics are hopeful, very strongly hopeful, that it'll be sooner than the 4 weeks, which could put them in the first round.
Okay, so I'm glad you cleared that up, because the way that you were kind of impressing upon Ime's message there is it wasn't 100% sure if it was going to be longer than the 4 to 6 weeks, unfortunately. But it sounds all right, sooner.
It's the short end. It's the short end. He's already rehabbing. He's already doing 2 a days. And the thing about a meniscus is it's not a ligament, it's not a muscle, it's a disc of cartilage. And so if you cut out what you need to cut out, and there's no risk of re-injury like there is with a hamstring or a strained MCL or something like that. This is just a piece of padding that you've cut out the little offending piece, and you after minor surgery you got to strengthen the knee back up and all of that stuff, but there's no impact on his explosion. Now some guys have a more significant tear of their meniscus and they miss a significant amount of time. This has been a minor tear, and it's been compared enough to guys who come back quickly that I know the Celtics won't tell the media this, but they are saying without saying they expect him to be back more quickly. When exactly that is, they're definitely not saying publicly because they don't want to jinx anything or get people's hopes up. But I'm reading the tea leaves and I'm betting that he's back potentially in the middle of this first round series.
Which, speaking of, the Celtics are staring down the barrel of a potential first round series between that of the Brooklyn Nets or the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, I think there's probably a preference here, right? If you're just a Celtics fan staring down the barrel of those two options,
sure.
And there's clearly a favorite in that play-in series as well between the Nets and Cavs. Now, John, I know there's no love lost between Celtics fans and Kyrie Irving specifically. How much of a show are we in for should the Nets find their way out of the play-in tournament and be matched up with the Celtics in this 2-7 bracket?
I think Boston will have some motivation for sure. It's also the team that knocked them out in the first round last year, and the Celtics weren't healthy. No Jaylen Brown, and Tatum put on an incredible show in that series. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are afraid of the Nets, and I get it. You got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, but look, we joked that yes, Cleveland would obviously be the better matchup, but also there's no Jared Allen or like Cleveland type rim protection in Brooklyn. So for all of the legitimate reasons to fear Brooklyn, there are legitimate reasons to fear Cleveland defensively, and Jayson Tatum likes to get to the rim. And, if you take that away, then that changes a little bit of the dynamic. If Brooklyn's defense can't stop Tatum from getting to the rim, yeah, it's going to be tough to stop Kevin Durant. But if you can't stop Jayson Tatum, then you got to overreact to Jayson Tatum. And the way this season's been going is very obvious that his assists have gone up. He will move the ball. I actually don't fear the Brooklyn Nets at all. I think this could be a 5 or 6 game series against Brooklyn. And so it'll be fun. And I think the Celtics will pick on Kyrie Irving defensively a lot. And Celtics fans will love to see that because the Celtics fans obviously have a little thing for Kyrie. So yeah, it'll be a fun series for Boston because there will be a lot of score settling going on.
Can the Celtics carry their dominant post All-Star break play into the postseason? Who are they going to find themselves matched up with in the first round? John, you're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Celtics. Appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
You got it, my man.